great talent against a Warlock. I actually like this change. It's going to be more so up to how Korlak can play on the Paladin.
Yeah, and right now we do see Shanimal setting up that gateway, trying to get that defense going right away from the start. Korlak is going to go for some Repentless Fake Out. Not going to find it quite yet as we see Chun-Li going for that incap. Fist of Fury onto Tiber. Lots of damage. Nice fear from Chanimal as well. Is going to follow that up, hopefully forcing out the Trinket sacrifice here. And Korlak is going to be using his human race shield, but he is going to hold on to that sacrifice for now.
Yep, and it's going to allow them to now get aggressive towards Chanimal. Shadow Step over, reconnecting as Nick dishes out the pain. Cubsy caught into a Hammer of Justice. I believe he is on Repentance DR, unfortunately, so Korlak's not even going to be looking for that window of opportunity. Now a Root Solar Beam, however, as they switch over to Chun-Li, catching him in midfield, forcing a Trinket of Touch of Karma very early on, and now Chun-Li can be an exposed target moving forward.
Yeah, and now the big thing about sub-rogues is that you want to force out those trinkets and then capitalize on that smoke bomb. So Chun-Li could definitely go down in a smoke bomb swap later. As we see Tiber, though, taking a whole lot of damage. Cyclone's being casted. Is he going to survive, though? Goes into bear form. Korlak caught up in that Seduce. Beautiful play by Chanimal. Can they find anything more? Doesn't look like it. I think Tiber should be fine for now.
It's very surprising to not see Korlak use Blessing of Sacrifice here and just instantly relieve the pressure. That was a great, greedy decision, but it will now put his team ahead. I'm curious to see if they can make that smoke bomb swap, as Zico was alluding to, over onto the Windwalker. Right now, it doesn't seem like they can. Chun-Li is just line of sighting Nick and not allowing a reconnect. Tiber getting pressured away, forced to use his Bark Skin. Chun-Li moving over to Nick, looking for a Fist of Fury. That smoke bomb is just looking like it could be pulled at any time. Chun-Li ports back. Nick shadow steps over to reconnect. Solar Beam Repentance. Chun-Li in a 1v2. Cubsy trinkets out. He gets cheap shot on the trinket. Where's the follow-up? Doesn't look like they have any just yet, and Cubsy, miraculous play, was greedy and did not have to even use the Spearling Totem. Now Chun-Li looking to reverse the pressure, triple leg sweep, double cap totem, but doesn't look like now a full fear secured from Chanimal as Tiber is dangerously low, hugging that bear form for dear life, but it may not be enough. Korlak gets feared away, sacrifice will save Tiber, redirecting the damage to Korlak. Chun-Li trying to capitalize on that for a swap, no, immediately retreating away, saying that I cannot stay out here any longer. Still no trinket for 30 seconds, no trinket on Cubsy now. This is a scary moment for the Super Frogs.
Yeah, and it's looking really good in this matchup now for Neat because they have that opportunity to take down Cubsy or take down Chun-Li here. It looks like they are going to go for Chun-Li for now, and it's not going to be quite enough yet, but Cubsy won't have that trinket available for the full blind later on from Nick, and they still have that smoke bomb to fall back on, so they have a lot of options here in terms of who they are going to go after, and Cubsy's going to need to do a good job here with keeping his Earth Shield swapped now to himself, and he does have it on Chun-Li for now as that full blind comes out, and it looks like Neat are trying to go after Chanimal here, but Chanimal does a great job kiting, fearing up Nick, and also shutting down that sap. So one of those big win conditions for Neat has gone out of the window.
Go after Chanimal. Go after who? He may as well be a ghost. He's just untouchable in most of these matches on that Affliction Warlock, dragging these games on for quite some time with his great kiting. And I think they're going to ultimately have to go after Chun-Li or Cubsy in the end of this. We see Incarnation pop. They're trying to put Chanimal down. Pops the unending resolve to reverse the pressure. Tiber immediately retreats back behind the pillar. But it's a ton of damage out of nowhere from Chun-Li. Massive touch of death damage going to be taking Tiber down as the Super Frogs advance in the series 1-0.
Yep, they're going to be up 1-0. That was actually really close, though. Neat had a whole bunch of signs of life in the matchup, and honestly, I thought it was going to be one-sided, but they did an incredible job.
Absolutely. I mean, Neat, they couldn't quite find that kill opportunity with the smoke bomb on Chun-Li, and that's because Chun-Li was just stacking up with his healer a lot. He had his portal in a very safe position, and he kept porting back every time he saw his healer in that stun lock, but still, there was a lot of opportunities here if they could capitalize on the blind a little bit better, maybe even swap to Cubsy here when he doesn't have that trinket. They could definitely find an opportunity to secure that kill, and I mean, Chanimal just doing a great job here controlling Korlak. Korlak really should have used one of those breakers. We were talking about how greedy he was in this game, but here he definitely should have used that bubble, maybe even at the last couple of seconds for that first fear, and try to top off his Moonkin, because he doesn't have that Hand of Sacrifice to fall back on, so you got to bubble early and start spamming out those heals.
Yeah, that's one of the things about the Holy Paladins. You don't have those immediate burst heals, so when you bubble, you either have to have the sacrifice or you need to do it early so you actually top them off. And I don't think it would have been that greedy of a play, especially because that was the touch of death committed. But yeah, Super Frogs is going to take that first game, which does mean Neat now gets to select the map as well as the composition. Do you think this is a composition they'll continue running?
I mean, it seems to be their strongest comp with the Moonkin Rogue. I would say the only thing that we may see moving forward is a healer change from the Paladin potentially to a Shaman. I'm not 100% sold on it overall. It could work out for them. I think the Paladin variant is better, just immune damage, and with the Avenging Crusader, they can negate all the rot spread pressure. They're not going to fall behind to that. It seemed like their setups were just a little bit lackluster. They got the cooldowns that they needed to early on, and then they just had no follow-up. They had the win condition for an extended period of time, and Chun-Li did a great job of delaying it, but still, I feel like they should have just ran them down, used the Divine Shield to aggressively push and get the smoke bomb kill that they set up for, because they just kited them and stalled it out for way too long. They shouldn't be able to do that.
I think the biggest mistake that Neat did this game was when they had the blind, they went after Chanimal with that. And you haven't forced a single defensive from Chanimal. He still has Healthstone, which is going to top him off. And then he still has his teammates' Healthstones as well that are going to be healing him, as well as his Unending Resolve, Trinket. All those defensives are still there. Whereas with Chun-Li, he still doesn't have a Trinket. So you can blind, and then if you don't have time to go for the sap afterwards, you can still blind, do a bunch of damage to Chun-Li, and then Smoke Bomb as the follow-up. You have some options there to work with. So I would have liked to see them pull the trigger a little bit earlier on that and try to set something up onto Chun-Li. Didn't work. And if they want to go after Chanimal, by all means do it. But many have tried in the past and failed, first of all. Second of all, you have to do it. It has to be a strategy that you do from the start, so you don't force a bunch of stuff on Chun-Li, and then you go on Chanimal and force another bunch of defensives there, and then Chun-Li gets his defensives back.
This is actually really interesting from Superfrogs, because I feel like 2 weeks ago, they brought in this composition against the move to try to figure out some sort of answer for RPS. And it seems like this is now like their bread and butter, like something they obviously have practiced a lot. Chun-Li on the Windwalker Monk. Everyone is on their mains, and they're all very scary on those mains. But do you think this is a composition moving forward into like the global scene against the best teams that is going to be the best in this particular meta?
I'm not entirely sold on this composition. I feel like the main reason to why it works so well is just because Chanimal doesn't die. Other Warlocks tend to go down after a while, and this composition obviously needs to play very long games where you can kind of rot down the team and run them dry on defensives. And the whole core of the strategy is essentially keep Chanimal alive. And it could work because a lot of teams don't have experience against it, but also I can see a lot of things that could just completely destroy this.
Yeah. So maybe Superfrog is going to have something else prepared. But for now, this composition seems to be working out very nicely for them. Looks like Neat, they'll be locking in the same comp. The Holy Pally with the Subtlety Rogue and the Moonkin. It's a scary comp. Lots of crowd control, lots of burst potential. Sid, what do you think they could do a little bit better to make sure they can close out game number 2?
It's just rinse, repeat setups. Root Beam the Shaman, stun the Monk, no Tiger's Lust, get a cooldown. Root Beam the Shaman, stun the Monk, no Tiger's Lust, get a cooldown, and eventually you drain it to the point where Chun-Li can't get away. And they did that in the first game, but then Chun-Li made it difficult by preemptively kiting. The answer to that is just run him over. Don't let him get away. They were so far ahead in cooldowns that they should just push with those cooldowns to stay alive and end the game at that point. And the Superfrogs don't really have a good way of dealing with that, aside from Chun-Li being able to escape and Neat not taking the aggressive stance to push in.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. Superfrogs, they know the composition they're going against. They know it's a setup-based composition, but we always see Superfrogs. They always play Horde. They always play the Blood Elf on the Windwalker Monk. Maybe Chun-Li going on the Orc will make him not as much of a pressure point, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Game number 2 between Superfrogs and Neat. Neat looking to get a point on the board.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're 5 seconds away. Superfrogs in the lead. Unstoppable on Restoration, Shaman, Affliction, Warlock, Windwalker, Monk, only being knocked down by the highest point earner, the Move, so far today.
Yeah, and now we can see again, Chanimal is going to do a standard setup, get that gateway down, get his portal on a gateway, and then he's going to move in and try to get those dots rolling. Immediate incapacitate onto Corlic, followed up with a cap totem actually, but there's not going to be a follow-up fear on that, so a nice job by Nick shutting that down, and Tiber is going to take a little bit of damage, have to use his bark skin on that setup, but now they're looking to go aggressive and looking to find that solar beam. Is Chun-Li going to free them the solar beam though? No, he gets stunned up before, and now we can see maybe a trinket come out of Chun-Li.
He actually preemptively used his shield wall, so it was a nice read from Chun-Li. He has to make these preemptive defensive cooldown moves, or else he's going to get stun locked and destroyed. This crowd control chain on Cubsy has been quite long, and now, because they've sustained it, Chanimal is forced to use Unending Resolve. It's still endless right now, it seems. Tiber, though, getting counter-pressured, caught into a Blood Elf silence. Corlic using Trinket and Divine Shield. Maybe a bit of a mistake there. He's not even going to have to use the Sacrifice. That's actually going to put Corlic incredibly far behind, and this is where I would critique Neat, is that their setups are good, but when they go in aggressively, they either overuse or they don't push in at all. They need to time these defensives better when they're pushing in to be able to find a kill, because now they're incredibly far behind.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the problem here. You can't really push in like that and just use all of your defensives offensively like that unless you're sure you're going to land a kill. But now we do see a full seduce onto Corlic. No way out of that one. Do they have follow-up CC? Do they have in-cap? Do you see Nick dropping very low? You see Tiber dropping very low, and they're going to take him down just based off of that trinket bubble overlap from Corlic. And I got to say, Corlic's Holy Paladin, it's been good, but his defensive management hasn't been, up there with someone like Robcab, like we saw in the previous series. He got to space out those defensives a little bit better, and sometimes use them a little bit earlier before he gets put in those awkward situations.
Well, really, really experienced Holy Paladin who's been in those situations but many times before. I mean, when you use your trinket, you either have to sacrifice, you have to know more crowd control is going to be coming your way. So if you trinket, you better be throwing a sacrifice to make sure your teammate stays alive. Because if you have to overlap your trinket, then get caught into another CC and you have to bubble anyways, then it's over. Like, you don't have any more CC breaks. They ultimately rotted all down. You can see in this replay how much pressure that SuperFrogs was really able to get in this endless CC chain that eventually found its way onto Corlic.
I gotta say, I love what Chanimal is doing here. Look at that. Look at that seduce. Perfect timing with that Grimoire of Service. Seduce onto Corlic, and then a nice leg sweep as well to follow it up. This was such a long CC chain, and I mean, this is only possible when you don't have those CDs. But another thing that I was thinking about in the first game is that Corlic is running those melee wings, that Avenging Crusader, which means that he has one less Blessing of Protection, one less Hand of Sacrifice. Potentially could survive a lot longer if he played just the regular build where he has double sacrifice and double Blessing of Protection, because you usually pick those melee wings to either deal with rot damage or to deal with just people going on you. But that's not really the case here. I feel like they would survive longer, even if they can deal with the rot damage better when those wings are up.
Well, it's interesting because the Affliction Warlock, like you said, normally puts out a lot of rot pressure, and that's why the Paladin picks the melee wings. But it seems like with Chun-Li and the way they like to kind of control the matchup, it's much more setup orientated, even though you wouldn't really expect that out of a comp like Windwalker, Lock Shaman. So they're doing the setups. Having the double sacrifice is going to be much more effective, it feels like, with the strategy that SuperFrogs is really bringing.
Yeah, I think switching to Blessed Hands is the play here for Neat, but unfortunately, I think Corlic is just getting outplayed by the SuperFrogs. That game was incredibly one-sided, despite their really great crowd control chain at the start. If they don't have proper defensive cooldown management, they're not going to last to the point where they can find a kill. Chun-Li is also preemptively using defensive cooldowns. You can tell that the SuperFrogs are a veteran team. They're not letting that first loss to the move really shake them in this next series. The underdogs, the newcomers, the team of Neat have a lot on their plate, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to handle it. I mean, Chanimal's team looks unbeatable.
Yeah, they've been doing a phenomenal job. Up 2-0. You can see Neat's tournament life is on the line. And now I believe it's going to be Neat's map selection as well as their composition selection. The last two games, I mean, honestly, the first game didn't look too bad for them. Game number 2, they kind of got smashed. But I feel like it really came down to the defensive cooldown management, like we kind of talked about. And if they can sort of do that a little bit better and prolong the game and get those setups that they need, they definitely still have a shot with this composition. So I think it's likely we see Neat stick with the same comp. What map do you think they'll likely go to?
I think something a little bit smaller is probably favorable for them.
I think Ruins.
Yeah, Ruins is a good map for them. They had a good showing in their first series on Ruins as well. That's where they started picking up their steam. Maybe that's the play to go for here. You go for Ruins, you try to have that sub-rogue, kind of just warp around everywhere and stun lock everybody, and then get those CC chains. But I really think that the comp that SuperFrogs are bringing here is really good as well into Moonkin teams, essentially, because you want to go after the Warlock because he's the target that has the longest cooldown on his defensives, and is also the target that is the squishiest. But at the same time, if you go after the Warlock, then Chun-Li can dispel all of those root beams with the Tiger's Lust. So you are pretty much forced to go into Chun-Li instead. I think Neat maybe are thinking about swapping a healer, because Corlic looked way stronger on that Resto Shaman as well.
Yep. SuperFrogs, they will be locking in the same composition, the Windwalker, Lock Shaman on Ruins of Lordaeron, and this is kind of a double-edged sword, because although on the Moonkin, now you're going to be able to get out the Cyclones, you're going to be able to swap to whoever they want. It's the same thing for SuperFrogs. You have an Affliction Warlock just spamming out Fears as well as UAs. We saw the control that came in from Chanimals in the last game. I think that's going to be doubled in this game on a map like this.
And Korlak going to be switching back to his Restoration Shaman, which is still decently effective. It's not as long of a chain as Repentance, but of course, if this is your comfort pick as a healer, I would say the most difficult role throughout all of Legion and Arena is the healer. So switching between them, if you're not used to it, you're going to make mistakes, especially against the best teams in the world. So Korlak going back to his main, I think, is a better decision, even though they do lose out on a bit of a counter advantage with the extra crowd control from Repentance, the extra damage from Avenging Crusader, or potentially the double sacrifice to stop setups. With the Restoration Shaman, I think he's just more well-rounded. He's got the interrupt reduction from being a Restoration Shaman, so Channel's interrupts are a lot less threatening, and he's still got Capacitator Totem potentially if for crowd control chains. I think it's just a good pickup overall from Korlak. Even though they're going to lose crowd control, they're going to last longer, and I don't think they need a 20-second crowd control. I think a stun and a root beam is probably long enough to kill the Windwalker Monk properly set up multiple times.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, as well as you have the cap stun that Korlak can now throw in on top of that root beam if they can manage to not kill that off. That's extra crowd control that they can get in this matchup. The thing is, I think Korlak on the Wrestle Shaman, like we kind of said, is going to be a lot more effective. You have a lot of heals when you do go into those long crowd control chains. If you can get the preemptive Earthen Shield Totem or just an Earth Shield with like a Riptide, that's a lot more healing than a Paladin's going to be able to provide when you go into those CC chains.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can still get the benefit of the Repentance still by having a Shaman, because all you do is you just get that cap totem and then you can push in maybe for a Spirit Walker's Grace into a Hex, something like that. So it's going to be up to Korlak to try to land those crowd controls onto Cubsy when Tiber and Nick are going for the setups.
Yeah, and I think Earth Shield also going to be very potent to help Tiber out. I mean, Tiber was basically just forced into bear form with the Paladin healer. Now with Earth Shield, the extra damage reduction, Tiber can get more aggressive and potentially look for Cyclones. Nick moving in, he's going to be looking for potentially a kidney shot. Tiber gets stunned. He trinkets to root Solar Beam out of this. This is a clean setup so far, but a Succubus play onto the Rogue, dispelled a little bit too late, allows Chun-Li to escape without trinketing, but surprisingly enough, actually used Touch of Karma still.
Yeah, he uses a Touch of Karma, putting a lot of pressure onto Tiber. A lot of damage coming out very early on. Chun-Li putting in some burst, but Tiber's able to stay alive.
Yeah, and I mean, Tiber right now is going to just be doing so much damage with their Incarnation. He's going to go for the Full Moon onto Chun-Li, getting wind sheared on that. Great job by Cubsy, and Chun-Li is going to hold on. And the cooldowns that you really want to force when you're playing Moonkin Rogue is that trinket. You want to get Cubsy's trinket, you want to get Chun-Li's trinket without using your smoke bomb, without using your blind, and then you can use those two big offensive cooldowns to push up. But now we see another setup.
Yeah, kidney shot on Cubsy. Tiber, no root Solar Beam just yet, and he's actually falling quite far behind with a full fear. Good crowd control from Chanimal. Tiber on the run behind the pillar, has renewal. He needs to use that before he gets stunned, though. A Hex now on Korlak, dispelled by Tiber, but he went out of bear form to get it, took a lot of damage. Cubsy is lava bursting, full moon attempt, but Tiber is the one that's ultimately falling behind. Root Solar Beam, stun lock. Surprisingly, Chun-Li does opt to trinket and use the wall. He will survive this setup, but a full Hex now secured. They're crowd controlling through it. Potentially a point here for Neat on the scoreboard if they can keep this chain going. A blind, surprising to not see Cubsy trinket this. A very greedy move by Cubsy to not trinket this blind. Nick standing on top of him for the sap. Half duration, Chun-Li though portals back to safety.
Yeah, and they're forced to go into Chanimals just because of how Chun-Li's positioning here. Chun-Li doing a great job here, learning from their mistakes in the series against the move, not overlapping with Cubsy on those trinkets. And now Cubsy is getting swapped to, but a beautiful incapacitate from Chun-Li is going to control up that sub-rogue. And now it is Super Frog's turn here to get aggressive. We're going to see Chanimal look for some fears onto Korlak. Not going to find it just yet, as Chun-Li doesn't have that incapacitate. And this could be the smoke bomb.
Oh, smoke bomb. Chun-Li caught in a stun lock, but he's got Touch of Karma. There's not enough damage to kill him in the stun lock, so he can use that if he needs to. He doesn't even need to. That was a clean smoke bomb attempt, but they didn't have the damage. They perhaps should have waited for Incarnation from Tiber to be available. They needed to at least force Touch of Karma on that last attempt, and they didn't find it. Now swap to Korlak as Chun-Li is pressuring him. We saw pressure on Absurge. He was able to survive, but will Korlak be able to do the same? He's falling infinitely behind. Will he hang on? Spirit Link Totem redistributes the damage, but there's an Affliction Warlock on the opposing team, rotting everyone down. They're trying to set up a miracle setup here. Pre-Nether Ward by Chanimal on the setup. It does ultimately get purged off, but Tiber is falling behind. There's no 3-minute timers for Korlak to recover through this. He's manually powering through it with healing waves. He's managed to sustain for now. Barkskin on Tiber. Will that be enough? Nick shadow steps back to cheap shot Chun-Li to save the day, and they do ultimately stay alive. But for how much longer? Spell lock secured onto Corlick. He's trying to run away, trying to recover behind the pillar. Chun-Li rolls over. Now they're swapping to Corlick to put the pressure. Cap Totem landed by Cubsy. This Cap Totem could close the game out as he's hanging on by a thread. Cyclone, but from Tiber, buys Corlick time to connect a healing surge and perhaps finally stabilize?
Yeah, but at this point, it's not looking good for Neat. They're trying to do a desperation swap on the Cubsy. They need to get the trinket here. Doesn't manage to find it. Chun-Li again with the incapacitates on the sub rope. Again, Chanimal with the fears. And at this point, for the team of Neat, the game is completely reset. They need to force Chun-Li's trinket. They need to force Cubsy's trinket.
Yeah.
And they're all rotting down right now.
Yeah, everyone on the team rotting down. Wincher on Corlick, interrupting the heal. Another crowd control on Corlick could secure this. They kidney shot Cubsy. Is the root beam available? They need the root solar beam. There's the root solar beam. They stunned to deny the Tiger's Lust for an extra second, but they do ultimately get it. But that means Chanimal's playing greedy due to breaking up the crowd control chain. He doesn't want to trade a cooldown. He's managed to survive. Paralysis onto Corlick. Into a fear from Chanimal. Good crowd control. Tiber trades out Barkskin, reducing the damage. Trying to stay in that bear form as well. Corlick is beginning to stabilize. Corlick, despite falling behind to the pressure of Chanimal, has maintained his mana quite effectively, but his team is rotting at the expense. Healing Tide Totem just came off cooldown. He pops that down on the ground instantly. He desperately trying to still recover. Full Moon attempt gets spell locked by Tiber. That's going to open up any potential cyclones. Nick is moving over for a kidney shot, or a blind actually. Goes for the blind. Cubsy pre-healing Tides with Unending Resolve, I believe should be enough for Chanimal to survive this crowd control, unless they can keep chaining it together, Zico.
Yeah, and now we see Chanimal running for dear life here. He's trying to not overlap his Unending Resolve with Cubsy's trinket, and he manages to hold on to it. However, a 3-minute cooldown for a 2-minute cooldown, which is the blind, is not a too bad trade for Neat, but they're gonna have to rinse and repeat this a couple of times. They're gonna have to get a big CC chain onto Cubsy. There it is. Root Solar Beam. Chanimal's taking a lot of damage. They need to get Cubsy's trinket on this CC chain here, but again, Chun-Li with the incapacitate, with the double Fist of Fury, and Chanimal is going to get away with that fear spam as well, doing a great job here kiting. But right now, Corlick is doing fine on mana. We can see Tiber has his Barkskin active. He's gonna be fine. Nick has his Cloak of Shadows, so the game is kind of reset at this point, and they could potentially get Cubsy's trinket on that next blind, and that could really open up Chanimals for dying in a smoke bomb later.
Oh, the smoke bomb right here, and now no defenses from Chun-Li, but Cubsy sneaks in for a Spearling Totem. Cubsy actually getting sapped as he moves in. Spearling not breaking that. Now Nick though falling behind and ultimately KO'd with a double stun fear onto Corlick. Great crowd control from the Super Frogs. 3-0-ing Neat, the underdogs. They stay alive in the tournament for a second chance at that